Hello everyone, this is me, Kush Kumar Mandal, bearing the USN 1B19CV 0009. Today I am gonna presenting the topic about eco-floating homes under the guidance of Mr. Thagiraj KJ, Assistant Professor from Civil Department, Sri Venkateswara College of Engineering, Bangalore. Now let's discuss the intro part about the eco-floating homes in briefly. Floating term in the foundation engineering is used when the soil beneath the footing doesn't experience any extra load as the load of the structure is equal and less than the soil displaced. Floating houses are similar in concept which and normally defines those houses which are constructed on water in a way that the load of the structure is equal or less than the uplift force of the water which helps in floating the house on water. The types of floating houses. There are mainly two types of floating houses, one which permanently float and the other that float only during flood water else get placed on ground particularly during dry season if there is no water. Here we can have a brief look. The picture shown above is the perfect example for the homes that permanently float on water. The second picture also very clearly satisfy all the necessary condition for the eco floating homes that are permanent or can be said as permanently floating homes. Now let's move to the basic principle. The principle used is the Archimedes principle, which states that the upward buoyant force that is exerted on a body immersed in a fluid, whether fully or partially submerged, is equal to the weight of the fluid that the body displaces. Based on this principle, a hollow concrete box is created when is open on top, up on which the superstructure is constructed in a similar fashion as traditional buildings. Here mention some of the building techniques that can be adapted for the construction of eco-floating homes and is as these are transported from the pan to the side by towing it with a boat in water. Buoyancy and stability are the important aspects that are to be taken care. Floating houses are manufactured in a manufacturing plant free from weather condition. Now let's take a look at the buoyancy. A house of 100,000 kilos pushes aside exactly 100,000 kilos of water. 100,000 kilos equals 100 cubic meters spread out over a surface of 50 square meters. This leads to a depth of 2 meters. Floating houses do not need to be lighter than land-based homes. It means it should be as heavy as the homes that are being constructed on the land surface. The weight of the furniture and the installations quickly adds up to as much as 6 or 7,000 kilos. This makes the house sink for around 10 centimeters deeper into the water. At the construction sites, this caisson is poured in a single pour, making it free from vulnerable cracks and holes. It can lie in the water for hundreds of years without maintenance. The space inside the caisson, the so-called source lieu means under the water, can be used as a part of house. A lot of residents have turned it into their bedroom floor since the level is situated 1 meter and a half below the water, making the view limited. Here we have another term called balancing. Balancing is very much necessary for the construction of any kinds of either land-based or water-based homes. The weight of the floating house must be evenly distributed over the surface area. This applies to the building itself as well as the furnishing and installation inside. If this is not the case, the house will tilt to one side or the other. This is uncomfortable in extreme situation, even unsafe, and last but not the least, a very awkward sight. A small deviation of half a degree means a tilted position of a numbers of centimeter at the roof. In some cases, the stability was achieved by the installation of balancing tanks. There is also a chance of tilting of the house even due to the unsymmetrical placing of the things in the house. In order to overcome these provisions are made to place sand or fill with water bottles to counterbalance the weight of the heavier objects. Now here comes the another term that is called stability. Balance is the degree of tilt in calm weather. Inherent to floating houses is the fact that they sway to and fro in case of heavy wind regardless of the balance. A tilted position of 4 degrees is acceptable as long as the distance to the adjacent house remains at least 3 meters. To keep the house in place, they have all been connected to two steel mooring poles by means of a fixed connection. The construction allow houses to move up and down a couple of decimeters along with the water level. The mooring poles are positioned in an angle, this giving the greatest stability. A wooden construction on top of concrete base gives a low center of gravity. A house that is top heavy would be much more sensitive to a storm and heavy weather. For the same reason, it is advisable to put the bathroom on the lowest floor and the kitchen on the entrance level. Now, water management. Under water management, we have water quality, and it goes like this. Still, isolated water quickly becomes turbid. It provides an excellent habitat for algae, including the toxic blue-green algae. To overcome this difficulty, the water should be continuously kept under motion. Now, here our next heading is the waste management. We know that managing the waste for the construction or during the construction of any kinds of structure is very much more necessary for the desired output. There is an annual deposit of 1 to 2 centimeter of sludge every year. The main reason for the floating houses to have a depth of maximum of a meter and a half is that their soles remains enough space between the concrete foundation and the bottom of the lake. If this is not the case, the house could get stuck in the mud when the water is low. Similarly, dredging of sludge is done periodically. Now let's see the homes that float only when the level of water rises but sit on the ground during the dry season. Generally, there are two basic principles for making floating houses. First is the pontoon principle, in which one makes a solid platform lighter than the water, and the other based on the ship, in which a hollow concrete box is created which is open on the top. The pontoon principle has the benefit of its use in shallow water as compared to the hollow concrete box, while the concrete box has the benefit of higher space utilization within as a part of the building. Both type of floating houses are connected with the flexible connection to the quay, so the houses can rise with the water when the tide changes. Now let's look at the different features of eco-floating homes. These houses are fixed to the vertical guiding poles. With the help of these, the houses can rise up to a height of maximum of 18 feet. These houses are efficient even in the shallow depth of the water. Their structure serves as flood resilient construction. Now let's look at the different case study which has been carried through every year. Floating building community in Amsterdam. In low-lying country like Holland, planning was focused on separating and maintaining the division between land and water by reclaiming land from the sea, by building dams and heightening dikes. Problem became further acute in the last decade due to global warming, as leading to rising water coupled with several unusually dry summers. The sea level is said to have risen by 20 centimeter in the last century, that is 20th century, and is expected to rise by three times the amount in the 21st century. Therefore, floating houses is becoming a necessity in the coming years. The houses, which are designed to withstand gales, are built on floating platforms. Similarly, let's take the look at the design. Together with two stone dikes, the island of Esterger Island collectively create a neatly defined area, a square of water in the city. The power line that has a construction-free zone of 50 meters on both the sides in this area cross through a fifth line. Together they divide the area into two triangular components for the floating houses. Here you can look at the picture regarding the brief case study on eco-floating homes. Programme water but according to final urban design plan, and it goes like this: 165 floating houses, 55 project based houses in three types, that is 13 Vancouver solo residential space 156 square meters owner occupied, 24 Sydney duo 107 square meter owner occupied, 110 private plots and 38 built Rest will follow. 7 dyke houses of 128 square meter owner occupied. 3 pile dwellings 112 square meter owner occupied. 13 office spaces and a car park also intended for residents of the floating houses. Architectural style. The architect Marlis Romer gave the project-based houses a non-nonsense design basics referring to the odd designs. Floating gardens and terraces are more numerous than in the West. Sometimes a shade is placed on it, or the base on which the annexe floats is turned into a cellar. The main reason for unity is the fact that the vast majority of residents have used to entire building envelope the outer limits of the dimensions plot. And so, despite varied architecture, a distinctive topology has been created. A square form, the living area on the second floor around 1 meter above the water, and a third story where half the surface has been set for a roof terrace. Now let's take look at the conclusion part for the eco floating homes. Floating houses may be the need for the future in coastal areas and flood prone areas in India also. The technology of floating buildings is extended to develop artificial floating island in a similar method of design. These buildings stand as answer to meet the difficulty of raise in the water level. Though this technology is not required in India but is essential for some parts of the world and is being vividly used in different parts of the world. These buildings are treated to be eco-friendly, sustainable and also replenishable with very few minor setbacks. Thank you.